My name is Silva, and I'm a 7th year teacher. I spent the first 4 years as a high school agriculture science and shop teacher, and I've spent the last 3 years as a junior high school math and science teacher, which includes right now pre-algebra, algebra, earth science, life science, and physical science. So my degree is in landscape architecture. I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo to become a landscape architect and graduated from that program and worked a year in the industry before realizing I wanted to become a teacher. And so my path to becoming a teacher is slightly different than those students or those professionals now who went to school to become a credentialed teacher in the state of California. When I returned to school for my teaching credentials, it was a little bit unique situation for me. Because my degree was so specialized, there was a lot of coursework that I needed to make up to prove that I have the plethora of knowledge of a 4-year degree that revolves somewhere around education. Landscape architecture does not. But I didn't have the time or the money to go back to school for 4 years. And so one of my options was to take and pass the CBEST, which is a group of specialized tests that prove to the board that you have the competency and the curricular knowledge of a specific coursework. And so I took the agriculture sciences CBEST, which pretty much accounted for 77 units of study at Cal Poly, and therefore returning to get my credentials, I only had to take 1/4 of ag-specific classes and then 2/4 of credentialing classes through ag education and education to become a credentialed teacher. So the CBEST is a great way, especially if, like me, you didn't go to school to become a teacher and then all of a sudden you realize you want to, that's your calling. It's a great way to get on the fast track in getting your teaching credentials. The really cool thing about the CBEST is now, as a credentialed teacher, I can actually take any CBEST test offered and become credentialed in that specific curriculum. And so if my credentials are in science right now, I could actually take an algebra test, or I could take an English test, or a social sciences test. And if I pass, I will now be a single subject teacher in that field in the state of California. And so by getting my teaching credential is the first step into widening the horizon for the areas which I can teach. Now, to take one step back, I'm saying single subject. That is different than multiple subject teachers who teach K6, or like I do now, K8. You could have a multiple subjects degree and not a single subject specific degree for high school and beyond. During my credentialing program, there was another test I had to take. It's called the CBEST, and that is a general competency test. If you remember back, kind of the SATs in high school, but easier than that, in all honesty. It was an easier test than the SATs. It challenges your competency to a 10th grade level in reading and mathematics. And so to prepare for the CBEST, in order to either get into a credentialing program, or some programs, they don't make you take it until you're exiting, but you would simply have to brush up on your sophomore year of high school in terms of reading, literature, and mathematics skills. So my California Clear teaching credential denotes that I am an ag specialist instructor, and therefore I can teach any class at the high school level under the direction of ag education. This does not allow me to teach science in a public school unless it's an ag sciences class. Now, I currently teach at a private K-8 school, and private schools are slightly different than public schools, and they don't specifically force their teachers to be credentialed in the subjects they are teaching. I'm not saying I'm not qualified to teach in those subjects, nor am I saying it's okay that teachers who don't have credentials teach things, but my ag sciences degree was more than enough for my current employer to feel that I could fit the need that they had at the time. So what's fun about teaching? What's not fun about teaching? Because you can make it whatever you want to make it. That's what I love about being a teacher. On top of that, I teach science, which is pretty much the coolest thing you can teach as a teacher, because instead of just reading books and writing things down, we get to do stuff. Case in point, I brought a couple of things just to show along. This year in my physical science class, my 8th graders, we do a lot of hands-on activities, and we're talking about forces and fluids. So check this out. I bought this kit just to see what it's like, and so it's going to show the kids how pressure in closed systems can be used for mechanical advantage, i.e. make us do things we want to do, which is really cool. And now, being a former high school shop teacher and currently having my wood shop at my house, I'm going to replicate this kit and make like 9 more of them, so teams of kids can actually build this thing and I don't have to spend hundreds of dollars doing it, so we can build in class, which is really cool. Previous to this, we just got done with Forces in Motion, where we did an egg drop project and the kids had to build egg drop vessels, but this year I changed up the rules a little bit. They had to build a vessel that had some type of apparatus that would kind of negate gravity or create drag, anti-friction, or excuse me, increased air friction. And so they all had parachutes or some type of wing or blade that slowed them down on their fall back to earth. On top of that, instead of dropping it from a roof that, I climb up a ladder on a roof lane, it's only like 18 feet off the ground. I called Davey Tree Company this year, and they brought out their boom truck, and they hoisted our projects to 60 feet in the air. You want to talk about cool, that's something newsworthy. And kids are going to go home and talk about that to their parents. And they should, because it's totally awesome. And that's what's cool about being teachers. You can do stuff that is awesome and memorable and fun. Another thing we did this year, we built hoverboards. Now, we made them out of like CDs and balloons, but it gives the kid the idea of here's how a hovercraft works, You have forced air through some type of orifice that spreads air evenly and diffuses outward, and it creates this frictionless platform for it to ride on. And then you can tie it into things that are currently happening. Have any of you heard of Hyperloop yet? Hyperloop Technologies, which is one of Elon Musk's kind of crazy ideas back in 2013. He's like, why a bullet train in California when we can send people 760 miles through a tube instead at half the cost? Well, turns out that hoverboards use the same technology as these Hyperloop systems that are now currently in the making all around the world, and they're having races to do them. But instead of just like leaving it at the CD hoverboard, we also built one life-size, and then we rode on it around in our cafeteria, because that's what you can do in science. You can make it for real. Another thing I love about teaching, field trips. I love going on field trips because, well, pretty much, I get to pick where we go. All I have to do is tie it to the curriculum I'm teaching. Well, that's super easy because in earth science we're learning about plate tectonics. What do we have down the road? Like 70 miles down the road, Pinnacles. It's not very professional if you laugh at the person who's being interviewed about that. Dr. Burchett started laughing at me in my interview, and that's super rude of her. So we're back. I was talking about field trips. So field trips, going to Pinnacles National Park. I take my kids. We do all-day field trips. Like, I'm not in any way interested in getting back to school when the bell rings. We leave at 7 in the morning. We return at 8 at night. We usually put down between 6 and 8 miles of hiking along the way of wherever we're going. So this year we did Pinnacles National Park, and we did Point Lobos State Reserve for our marine ecosystems field trip. Earlier this year, in October, I got to go to Yosemite National... You're laughing again. She's laughing again. Anyways, I got to go to Yosemite National Park for science camp with my 6th graders. 4 days in Yosemite, and we stayed up in Crane Flat, and we saw the big trees. We hiked to Vernal Falls and the Mist Trail. I mean, these are experiences these kids are never going to forget. Neither am I, because I just had a blast. And like, so stuff like this that like you can make, well, in my case, science come alive for these kids, and it just makes it so much fun to be a part of that. When kids come to you at the end of the day like, Mr. Silva, this was great. I know it was. This was great. I'm glad you had a good time. And I will say this, I'm not saying become a teacher for this reason, but you get a lot of cool stuff. I mean, kids give me presents all the time. Birthday, Christmas, Valentine's Day. They're giving me stuff all the time. Here's one of the ones that says, thank you, a latte. It's a cup. I hold pins in it now. Yeah, so it's cool because like kids appreciate you, and especially little ones. They really show that they appreciate you if you make the effort to be a decent teacher and a role model in their lives and stuff. Not to say that there aren't challenges with teaching. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges, but in my opinion, the good outweighs the bad. Twofold, for sure. The relationships you create with the kids, the relationships you create with the parents, the memories you get to make by doing the stuff you do, it makes teaching so worth it, in my mind. So, some of the challenges that come with being a teacher. But before I get into that, I forgot to mention some of the perks. School attire, apparel. I had like 30-something shirts from my old high school, and now I've got a whole gamut full of new clothing for my new school. This is like my newest hat right here. It's a flat bill. My wife hates this hat, so I wear it all the time. And it has my logo on it, so I'm promoting our school, which is totally cool. My principal wants me to do that. Some of the challenges with being a teacher, well, there's quite a few. You have a lot of different clients that you work for, and they all have different expectations. And so you as a teacher have to make your expectations and your policies very clear at the beginning of the year, and you have to stay consistent. Otherwise, stuff's going to fall apart on you. But I think the most challenging things about being a teacher is staying good at what you do. You know, if you want to be good at whatever it is you do, you can't ever sit idle. And so there's always something more you can do, and always something more you can do. And you have to physically like pick how much you want to bite off, because it's overwhelming. There are hundreds of different ways to present material, information, and there's more technology the kids can use, and it's overwhelming at times, and you got to pick and choose what you're going to do to the best of your ability to reach these kids the best way that's going to benefit them. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges is, you know, continuing to push yourself to be a better teacher, and at the same time not being overwhelmed, because it's not an easy job. It's definitely a challenging job, and there's a reason why we get summer break. It's because we work really hard during the year. My wife is also a professor, and she, you know, gets up at 8 in the morning, works all day, come home, I make dinner really quick, and she goes to the office, and she works until 9 o'clock at night or later. And this goes Monday through Sunday. It's not even just a 5-day-week job. It's intense until, you know, your spring break, your Christmas break, or your summer break. It's an intense job, but it's definitely worth the effort, and it's super rewarding. It's super dynamic. There's never a stagnant day, and you always have stories to come home and tell. So, those of you who possibly are thinking about pursuing a teacher credential in the future, I highly recommend that, and I'm assuming Professor Burchett will pass on my contact information if anybody would like to contact me to talk more about being a teacher in the great state of California.